I'm your host, Donna Cates, and each week we'll dive into powerful stories, expert strategies, and practical tools to help you take charge of your financial future. Whether you're planning for retirement, navigating a divorce, or simply looking to build your wealth with confidence, this is your space to grow, learn, and thrive. Let's get started with today's podcast. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited today to introduce you to Mishkat, our Moumin, who owns Communication of Success. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Donna. Appreciate it.
I'm very delighted to have you, and I'm eager to delve deep into your career journey now. So, if you could give us about a 90-second overview of what you do and why you got into it.
Thank you, Donna. I am a nonprofit leader with expertise ranging from leadership development, financial growth, and I specialize in helping nonprofit achieve long-term financial stability. I got to my career so far through learning by doing. I found myself in positions where I have to support my nonprofit operating in war zones. So I learned by doing. And it's a privilege to be here with you and to learn from your experience and to connect with your audience. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. So you just said something that really intrigues me, and that's the fact that you're not only doing these fabulous things for nonprofit organizations, helping them to be more profitable and more long-term stability for them, but you're actually doing that in war zones. Tell us just a little bit more about that.
I am originally from Iraq, and in my lifetime, even though I look so young, I survived 4 wars. I have been in war zones since I have been a child. And there is something you learn from those experiences. You learn how to be resilient. You also learn how to be financially resilient. How can you run efficient operations without impacting the outcome of each program? That's part of what I'm going to call financial resilience. Just to give you an example, I worked as the environment minister for Iraq after the change of the regime. My budget was $7 million, tackling major environmental issues, including the distraction of the unique ecosystem of the Iraqi marshlands dating back to 3000 BC, where indigenous people lived and worked in these environments. I raised more than $70 million to address these challenges, and these programs are still running until now. I could not have done it without the community leaders who supported my efforts and without the Iraqi professors who saw the value in engaging international communities and funding these projects. We came together as one unit. But basically, in each challenge, there is an opportunity, and it depends on the leader how to identify these opportunities and engage stakeholders in a conversation around financial stability.
And that I think the work that you're doing is so vitally important. And I think that, at least from my perspective, a lot of people, unless they're working in corporate America and they're given an opportunity to contribute directly through gifting or donations, a lot of us don't know how to be involved and support those nonprofits. Can you tell us just a little bit about how just the layperson, the solopreneur like myself, or just anybody can have an impact on the nonprofits and help them be more sustainable?
Thank you so much for that question. Basically, it starts from you getting involved. Oftentimes, we think about financial stability in terms of the dollar value. There is a lot to it more than that. For example, each one of us have expertise and background. One idea that I encourage each leader to think about, especially nonprofit leader, is creating an endowment. You need to think about this from day one. How can I create an endowment to help me and help my cause? Which is something can come from a community leader such as yourself. So reaching out to the organization with advices, ideas, opportunities, that would be great. The other option that I also encourage nonprofits to think about is investments. So, for example, reaching to Fidelity to understand what services they offer to nonprofits. If you think about your nonprofit as a business that is helping the community, then you start seeing it differently. And here comes the role of the community. What ideas do you have? It doesn't need to be monetary because the funds will come from the idea itself. But what ideas do you have to scale up a program? So reaching out is step one to help an organization. Oftentimes leaders tend to be kind of focusing on day-to-day activities and making sure they meet their grand deliverables and objectives for this particular grant or program. They rarely have the opportunity to step back and think what can they do for the next year and the next year. And here comes the role of community members, such as yourself and our audience, to help those leaders achieve and think about long term financial stability.
Okay, that's so enlightening for me. So, and I know a lot of people think, I have to give money, but you don't necessarily have to give money. You can give knowledge. You can give graciously of your time in helping do things. And I totally can relate to the leaders just being caught up in the day-to-day activities and not being able to look forward. And that's where they really need to be spending their energy. So anything that we can do in the community to take that load off of them on the day-to-day would be empowering, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And the unique situation about nonprofits is oftentimes they are understaffed. And I know this from firsthand experience. So even though you can be the executive director, you will find yourself doing everything, starting from processing payrolls all the way to reviewing and delivering programs. So by the end of the day, being so engaged in the process takes from your ability to think forward. And then, thinking forward or envisioning the next step would be, set aside. I'll get to it when I have time. And honestly, you won't have time. So having community members come in and, just like you said, contribute knowledge, and even if it does not lead to financial engagement, the feeling of being supported by community members will lift up your morale, will lift up the team morale, and would get them to think outside the box versus staying day in and day out focusing on the programs or how to get these deliverables completed.
Got it. Got it. So tell me your business communication of success. How do you engage with these organizations? Are they hiring you directly? Or are you offering your service? What's that look like?
Honestly, it's a little bit of both. So sometimes I reach out to organizations offering my services when I see an opportunity. I don't like, to be honest with you, cold calls or reaching out of the blue. But if we met and we engaged in a conversation, and from the conversation, I can sense, I can feel the organization needs some help, I approach them and I send them an outline of my services and proposal. I always give them, a discounted package, so to speak, because I understand how difficult it is to operate as a nonprofit and meet your objectives. Oftentimes, also, the other spectrum, so to speak, they reach out because they need help or they need support with something. And honestly, my door is always open. I'm willing to work with all organizations because my objective is to see them flourish. They serve a purpose in our communities, and they do have the passion and the drive. The least I can do is lend them a hand and make sure that whatever services I'm offering, they can afford it and they get a lot for their money versus, just a little bit for asking too much.
Got it. So, my next question is, what makes you unique in the way you help others? And I think one of the unique things is how you're willing to work with them at a little bit of a discount so that they can actually afford your services. But tell me a little bit more about what makes you unique with the way that you're helping these companies or
Thank you.
foundations. Mhm.
What I offer them is unique by itself. So I don't offer them, a generic training and then leave them hanging and that's it. If I'm engaged with them, I make sure that they have the services and the deliverables that they need. Because I come from a nonprofit background, I understand what they go through and I can relate to it. So my services is not like let's spend one day thinking about the strategic plan and that's it. And perhaps the strategic plan end up in the drawer or on the website without
Mhm.
any follow-up. I make sure to follow up with them, provide them with, KPIs, key measurable impacts for their work. I continue the follow-up process, all of that with no charges to make sure that whatever we implemented is, taking place in reality. And oftentimes you will find out that when you implement, things will be different. So whatever we discussed and talked about and written is not exactly how it's implemented. So certain tweaks will be required. Additionally, I help them manage their projects. You see, oftentimes, for example, in the nonprofit world, you have a project and you say to yourself, well, the donor gave me, let's say, 1,000, $100 for that particular project. So I have a lot of money. But before you know it, you will end up saying, where did that money go? How
Mhm.
did we get there? Because if you build that mindset that I have a lot and you engage in spending, before you know it, the money will be gone and you don't have a way to track it. So, one thing I do for them is I create a work plan. So, here is the funds. Here is the person who is doing task and completing it. Here is their hourly rate. Here is when the task is due, and so on. So, by the end of the day, whatever money you have, you will make sure that you are spending it efficiently. Oftentimes when nonprofits get funding, and even, especially if it's a large amount, they spend lavishly, and I can understand that because you have been deprived for quite some time.
Mhm.
So you end up renting the office you wanted, you end up buying, the big desk that you want, you end up subscribing to every service you have been deprived from. And before you know it, the money is depleted and the project has not been completed. There's also the expectation that, once that donor, gave me some money, they will always give me. So I can rely on their, funding and support. Not reality. They can give you some now, they might not give you anything next year. It depends on their priorities, funds availability, and what do they know. I also want to take a minute to, get nonprofits to think about their mission statement. I want them to think about it like the recruiter who is reviewing 100 resumes. they will flip through those quickly. They don't have time to spend on reviewing the entire website. If your mission statement is vague, if your mission statement is disengaging, as a donor, I will go to the next organization. So it's up to you to create the mission statement that is eye-catchy, that is meaningful, that tells me immediately what this organization stands for.
That's awesome. So, in what I'm hearing, just to kind of reiterate, you're really providing a service in that you're giving them the processes, the structure, the literal how to put these things in place and make it a repeatable process. And that's a huge benefit.
Exactly. I want each nonprofit to stand out, to show its wonderful programs, and to attract donors. And if you think about your website, your website is the first thing that a donor would see. So it's kind of the first impression. And again, if your mission statement is very lengthy, very vague, unclear, the donor will immediately flip and go to the next one. One item also from, donation perspective and financial perspective, the tax codes and laws have changed recently. So, in terms of wealthy donors and going after them, for them to be able, for those donors to be able to claim tax deduction, $100, $500 won't do. It depends on which bracket they are in. So you might as well ask for the $10,000, but in your letter of asking, you need to be clear that, this may help you claim tax deduction.
Mhm.
After all, you can also encourage them to consult with their accountant, but you need to bring that language there. Nowadays, it's not enough to say your donation is tax deductible, because I know from filing my own taxes, I cannot claim $20. You cannot claim $500. It depends on which, bracket you are in. So even when I go to Goodwill, I see so many people, I myself am among them. I don't take the receipt. There's no value in collecting it, only for my accountant to say you cannot claim it. But if we flip that again, if we see the opportunity in this case, going after wealthy donors and encouraging them to contribute large amount, that's this way they can claim the tax deduction. That can be something there. If I may take one more minute to talk about legacy donation.
Yes.
So many prominent figures in our community, they want their legacy to continue. Whether their legacy is in education, environment, workforce development, they need someone to approach them, someone to tell them, I'm willing to name this program after you. I'm going to name this event after you if you fund it or if you care to donate to it.
Yeah, that just gives people a little bit of an extra incentive there. And I will share with you as a financial advisor and working with affluent clients, I think, a lot of times, if when you've had that conversation with them about how to effectively do their donating so that they do get the tax deduction, it might be they give a much larger sum this year and maybe nothing the following year, but then they will again the next year, right? So we have to kind of be
Exactly.
strategic, but if they're not going to do that unless they know and they've been educated, right? So tell me, I'd love to know. Um, I know you've had some unique life experiences just because of your exposure to war, but what is the biggest challenge that you've faced to this point in your life, whether that's personal or professional, and how has that shaped the way you're doing business today?
Thank you so much for that question, which honestly, it engaged me in reflective thinking. So that's the power of your question. Some of the challenges, as you said, personal. So starting from my first day at the law school at Baghdad University, where the professor said, What are all the women doing here? Go back to the nursing school where you belong, all the way to, surviving a suicide bomb attack where 4 of my bodyguards were killed. And I've witnessed that just because, I dared to lead as a woman, I dared to provide services for vulnerable communities. I'm not sure if our audience knows, but in Iraq, the summer is very lengthy. It can stretch to more than 6 months, and the heat is really unbearable. It's more than 100 degree. If you don't have water services, can you imagine how would you survive? How would your children survive? So I organized the community to provide safe drinking water. After seeing children drinking sewer water or any type of water they can put their hands on. Immediately following, the launch of these programs, I survived a suicide bomb attack where, the leader of Al Qaeda said, "We will target her wherever she goes." Despite all of these challenges, I am still here. I'm operating. I'm willing to help. I truly believe in leadership that empowers communities. And that's why I'm keen on helping nonprofits, because their work, the work they do, is unbelievable. In terms of some of the issues that I experience leading nonprofits here, it's just like I talked about before. Expansion for the sake of expansion, where the results would lead to depleting resources. I have achieved kind of a rate of 240% turnover in terms of rescuing at-risk programs. And I maintained that. I also achieved more than 2,400% rate of visibility on LinkedIn for nonprofits that I help. One point that I would bring again to the attention of nonprofit leaders: if the community is not excited about what you do, they won't give you money. And again, that leads us back to the idea that we started with. It's the knowledge, it's the know-how to get started. So you can be doing wonderful things, but if you don't tell the communities, if you don't share these updates in an engaging way. So to be honest with you, I'm among those people who delete the newsletter. I feel like it's not something, let's say, that I asked for. Maybe I participated in an event, and through the event, I start getting these newsletters. But if the nonprofit would invest in a LinkedIn page where they share these updates along with some tips and strategies for people to come to the page. So even if I don't want to learn about the organization, maybe I want some tips on workforce development, on educational resources available out there for classrooms, things like that. And then through the process, I learn about your organization. I get excited about it. The more excitement you get, the more engagement you have, the most likely you will be receiving funding after that.
Wow. And I'm hoping all the business owners and leaders out there just took in that tidbit of advice that you gave us about using LinkedIn to share our newsletters versus just dumping it into people's inboxes. That's a significant learning for me. All right, let's focus on another question here that's more personal. Tell me, if you could have lunch with any one person, living or deceased, who would that be and why?
I would be honored. I would beg to have a lunch with Martin Luther King Jr. I probably I wouldn't say anything during the lunch. I just want to, be in his presence, to, get some of the energy, the excitement, the unbelievable resilience that he has. like any other leader, I face some downtime. I sometimes doubt my skills, my abilities. I feel like I'm facing tremendous challenge that I cannot overcome. During these moments, what I do to lift up myself, I either pick up a book or try to watch a movie about a historical figure that I admire. And oftentimes I find myself either watching Selma or reading about, Dr. King, or, trying to get in touch with him anyway, anyhow I can. I even say to myself, okay, let's take a step back. What would he do if he were in my shoes? And take it from there. The tip that I also would like to offer to our audience is to connect with your higher self, to be the leader you admire, to think about how they react if they were you. And that would give you tremendous power. You know, uh, I still recall at one point in my career, I accepted back an employee who was undermining me, who was really disrespectful. But as my supervisor, asked me to take him back, she said he has no place to go. If you don't take him, he needs to go. So I sent an email and I said, you know what? I kind of went back and thought about it carefully, and I would like to welcome him back to the department with a clean slate. I'd like him to feel comfortable, to feel like he belongs. Uh, Immediately, when I shared that with my mentor, he was totally against it. But in this moment, I felt I connected with my higher self. I had the opportunity to reject him. But, having the opportunity to reject is equal having the opportunity to accept. So I thought of, offering him another chance and see how it goes.
Right. And that's empowering to me too, because I think a lot of times we just provide the answer that we think is expected of us without really digging in deep and seeing what resonates with us and our values. So thank you for sharing that story. So I would love to know, Mishkat, what is the best way for people to contact you, connect with you, learn how they can support you?
Thank you so much for that question. People can reach out to me through my website. The URL is thelanguageofsuccess.net, but the business is the communication of success. And my email is mishkat at thelanguageofsuccess.net. And I'm more than happy to connect with anyone who's interested in having a conversation, scaling up a program, thinking about, long-term stability for their organization. So I truly appreciate that question and the opportunity to share with the audience.
Absolutely. And now I will call on our listeners to actually take action, because nothing's going to happen if we don't take action. So please don't hesitate to reach out, because I know she would be delighted to speak with you. So thank you so much for being a guest today. I'm really honored that I got to meet you and learn more about you and the empowering work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Donna. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity to connect with you and learn from your experience. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. I hope today's conversation left you feeling inspired, informed, and ready to take the next step in your financial journey. Remember, building wealth isn't just about money, it's also about creating a life that aligns with your goals and values. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with the women in your life who deserve financial empowerment too. Until next time, stay confident, stay empowered, and keep building the life you desire.